Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all can hear us just fine. Sorry if we kept you waiting for a little bit, but we were facing some technical troubles, as can be expected. जब भी आप technology इस्तेमाल करते हैं, there's always one unforeseen challenge or the other. But I think welcome back from the Eid break. I hope you guys had a pleasant break. Obviously, there was a shadow cast on all of us, on the country, and with the pandemic, and obviously with the flight crash recently as well. So our thoughts and prayers to the people, to the victims and their families. Basically, we do these sessions. They're called Insights on a regular basis, and the idea is to keep a steady flow of learning and of community building and of insights coming to all of us, especially right now that we're kind of in this semi-quarantine kind of a situation where we're kind of forced indoors and in a lot of ways being forced to rethink the way that we do things, the way that we work, the way that we operate in the professional sphere, but also in how we live, in how we treat our environment, in how we get around, and in terms of, in this particular case, in terms of how we leverage different modes of transportation in terms of mobility as well. So specifically, coming right down to the topic, 2019 was the year of mobility startups, right? So pretty much throughout the year, this was the hottest space for any entrepreneur to be a part of. Pretty much every month you were coming across different news flashes of new entrants into the market, new investments being made, a lot of very aggressive action going on as far as the mobility space is concerned. May that be ride sharing, ride hailing, mass transit, logistics, you name it, right? So new entrants coming into the market, new investments being made, and also new markets being explored. We saw airlift, we saw swivel come into the fold. We saw a lot of new developments on the Uber and Careem front as well, who truly were, I think, the OGs of mobility and the disruption of that space and the disruption of transportation as we know it. 2020, however, had other plans. I'm sure you've experienced it yourself. I'm sure you've seen all the memes. We don't have to talk about how messed up this year has been and how challenging in a lot of ways, but also exciting in a lot of other ways as well. But in 2020, at the end of March, mobility came to a screeching halt, pun intended to some extent. I think 17th March was when Uber and Lyft announced the suspension of services, shared rides specifically, pretty much across the globe. And startups are now, in the last couple of weeks, attempting to stumble back onto the scene in a very limited and controlled kind of a capacity. So the question right now that we're faced with, that hopefully we'll get some expert opinion on from our guest today, is the whole mobility fad dead, right? And what does that mean? What does mobility look like in the future? So we're kind of looking forward to get all of this insight from our guest today. We're joined very kindly today by Zeeshan, who is the GM Pakistan for Careem. Zeeshan, thank you so much for joining us and taking out the time from your very, very busy schedule, I'm sure.
Thank you very much, Saad. Thank you for the kind introduction. And thank you for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be
here. The pleasure is all ours. So Careem, I mean, even if you've been living under a rock, everyone knows Careem. Everyone knows that Careem basically puts startups on the map for Pakistan and puts Pakistan on the map for the global startup ecosystem as well. I think we're all fairly familiar with the history as well. So Careem was established in July of 2012. Currently, I think as of probably the beginning of the year, was operating, probably still operating in 14 countries, more than 90 cities, and had a customer base of more than 30 million people and more than 1 million captains that were operating on its platform. Very notably, last year, another very significant achievement for Careem, and a source of pride for all of us. Although Careem is registered in Dubai, but we obviously take a lot of ownership in Careem and the talent that powers it. But Careem was acquired by Uber in 2019 for more than $3 billion. Zeeshan, in particular, has been with Careem for more than 3 years. He took over as the GM Pakistan in August of 2019, and previously was with Deloitte Consulting and companies like Ericsson as well, and has worked in a number of other places all across the world. Zeeshan, I'm sure you're having a very interesting few quarters ever since you took over Careem in Pakistan.
Because so I think Saad rightly mentioned, so Careem in Pakistan started in 2016. And since then, Careem has always seen growth. And we were really fortunate. We started with a very humble beginning. But then the kind of people we started attracting, it was only possible because of them that we were able to come up to a scale where we had actually registered more than 500,000 captains only in Pakistan. We were operating in around 14, 15 cities within Pakistan. Almost a monthly active base of around 3 million users was associated with our platform. And last year, I think it was even better when we basically got acquired by Uber on our terms, where the terms are very clear that Careem will continue to operate as an independent brand. So there was a win-win situation for all of us. Now, with this year coming in, I think we've all shaken by the COVID situation. Now, this is a very unfortunate situation. Nobody could have actually forecasted it. I call it a black swan event because I truly feel that nobody could have forecasted this event. And truly, if you look at the dynamics of this event or this sort of incident, it has actually disrupted demand as well as supply. Previously, we were always used to sort of upsets which were on one side of the domain. So either supply crisis or demand crisis. Earlier in previous crises, we catered for one of these challenges. But this was truly for the first time that we had to encounter both of these challenges. So which actually resulted in change of consumer behavior. So as the lockdown started happening, what actually happened we saw was that there were three things that actually happened in terms of consumer behaviors. One was there was a lot of shift from offline to online. One example I usually give is that internet penetration in countries like Pakistan and some other Asian countries went up to by almost 50%. Like companies like Netflix, Zoom, all of their stock prices like shot to the sky. So there was a clear shift from offline to online world. Secondly, in terms of consumer trends, now consumer became very much sensitive about hygiene, and they would stop spending on luxury items, and they would only start spending on whatever was needed. So necessities, basically. And lastly, I think we've also seen that even in terms of supply, there was a lot of disruption because whatever imports we were getting from, let's say, other countries, generally in Pakistan, they got impacted. So only in March, approximation is the hit to Pakistan was around 2% of the GDP, around $4 billion, which is significant. Now, specifically to mobility, and in this whole process, there were some sectors which were really hard hit. And of course, there were some opportunities as well, and we can talk about those opportunities later. But in terms of sectors which were really hard hit, transportation and mobility was one of those sectors which got really hit bad. And of course, Careem, we had to face this as well. And what happened for us was, of course, because of lockdown, we did not have any fleet. We had to stop or suspend our services, which actually resulted in, of course, all our revenue going down. I mean, our revenue was down by almost 80%. So this is the situation that we had to encounter. Now, at the same time, what we realized was there were a lot of opportunities as well. As I mentioned, that there was a trend from offline to online. So we quickly realized that. And we identified that there are a lot of users who are actually asking for, delivery services, food delivery services as well. So in Careem, we were basically, it was a plan for us to launch a super app in the region. It would be the first super app, and I'll explain what exactly is the super app. So what happened with this situation was that we had to expedite all of those efforts, and we expedited, our vision of becoming a super app for Pakistan. So this is
So
basically,
Zeeshan, before
yeah.
So before we actually get into some of these details, can you also run us through, like, as an executive and as someone in a leadership position in Careem, how exactly did you process this phenomena? Because, like, right now, I think, looking back, we can, like, spot a lot of these analyses, and what's going up, what's going down. Like, जब run time के ऊपर हो रहा होता है, then there are a lot of challenges because, like, day to day, the gravity of the situation is ramping up, and also keeping in mind that this particular pandemic was brewing internationally and in a lot of other markets. So, for example, I know that Careem and then obviously the parent company, Uber, is in a lot of different markets. So, like, when exactly did you guys identify this as like a legitimate threat that is going to come in? And किस point पे जो है वो आपने, and with your international leadership as well, when did you guys start having this conversation, and how did you process the phenomena, and did you feel like the gravity would be like as detrimental as it's turning out to be?
Because so I think it all started probably end of February. So mainly the regions where we were operating, these are like multiple countries, so 14 countries. So we started in some of the countries, the trend came earlier. What we started noticing were that government were actually suspending transportation services because transportation was the first impacted service that was actually put under lockdown. So as soon as it was locked down, we realized that we have a big platform and we'd already built some of the foundations on that platform. So, for example, we had our food business. It's called Careem now. It was already operational in a lot of countries, including Karachi as well. Similarly, we had our delivery services as well. So we had the entire platform. So as soon as we started seeing this for some countries, for example, in Dubai, I still remember there was a lockdown. Even in Pakistan, we started thinking that, how can we quickly pivot towards the new strategy because this is inevitable. This lockdown will happen. And I think the good thing was we were in a position, both from a talent and from a tech perspective, that we could cope with this kind of situation. So very quickly, I think by start of March, we'd all realized that we need to pivot our strategy towards expediting our work of becoming a super app, and that's where we actually realized that we need to do that. And in this process, we had to do a couple of things. Of course, we had to reorganize our tech so that they can focus on or prioritize food deliveries as well as delivery services. And secondly, we had to internally reorganize ourselves as well. So I think these
Yeah.
are the things that we did, and it was early March when we had actually realized that we will pivot towards this new strategy.
Makes sense. Or the super app is something that we've been hearing about from the Careem leadership and top executives for a few months. So obviously that got expedited. लेकिन इसके अलावा भी were there other measures that you guys were taking? And in terms of those measures being taken, I think specifically it'd be super useful to kind of understand, was there like a framework that you were using to process this information as it was coming in? Because again, specifically, like you said, it's a black swan event. लेकिन इस तरह की, not exactly of this nature, and not exactly of this मतलब इतना frequency हमारे lifetime में इस तरह की चीज हमने नहीं देखी. But markets crash, recessions happen. कभी ना कभी, like you said, demand side पे या supply side पे you do see some crises वगैरह, regulatory issues वगैरह भी आते रहते हैं. So was there a framework or like a methodology that you guys were also using? Because I'm sure like the information and the data coming in and the fires that had to be fought were very, very extreme. So other than the super app, what else was being done, and how did you come to the conclusion that this is the strategic direction that you need to take?
Because so I think in terms of framework, generally what we usually do is in Careem we have an extensive framework which is basically driven by our mission of simplifying lives of people. So from mission, then there are certain values, and there are three values that are core to us. Based on those values, we follow a system of OKRs, objectives and key results. And based on those OKRs, decisions are taken. Now, what happened in this event was there were some few OKRs which were on the demand side. Basically, how the way consumers behave and how they use our services. First thing we realized was that the consumer behavior actually started changing. And I think we were very lucky to understand this change very quickly, because otherwise, if you look at companies like, let's say, Kodak, or maybe even Nokia. Those were the companies which actually delayed these kind of noticing these kind of consumer behaviors, and of course they had to pay a big cost for that as well. So I think consumer behavior was first thing that we realized. We understood that this is actually changing. People are not using ride hailing in short term, whereas they will be using a lot of delivery and food services. So I think that was first thing. Secondly, in order to fix our house internally, of course, we had to take some measures. We realized that cash management is super important. Fortunately, Careem was in a position that we had ample cash, but of course, like we wanted to make sure that we do reconsider our burn, the kind of spend we were spending on, let's say, fleet as well as customers, and even internal operational costs. We had to reconsider those. We had to reconsider our burn, and we had to, of course, cut spends on things which would not impact employee morale generally. So I think these are a few things that we had to do, and this is the framework we actually followed. So I mean, it all trickled down from our OKRs. Then we identified what are the consumer behaviors that are actually changing, and which led to basically taking certain actions such as cash management and also pivoting quickly towards these new verticals within the super app.
Makes sense. Or if maybe like another question in that same vein pertains to the implementation of the strategy as well. Okay, again, being a large organization with thousands of employees, um, I think what we've seen is a lot of for fear of sounding a little cliched, like radical transparency coming all the way from the top to everywhere in the middle, और वो आपको एक coherence और एक वो alignment जो है वो नजर आ रही है at all the different levels. So in terms of चाहे वो super app की implementation हो या delivery की तरफ ज़्यादा emphasis हो या pivot हो, how do you think about that, and like are there any special structures वगैरह या special strategies वगैरह that you guys have in play? And also I think इसमें बड़ा ज़रूरी एक चीज़ ये भी है कि in times of uncertainty और इतने challenging time के अंदर employee morale, like you said, is a critical component to sustaining the business, and then to be able to innovate the way that you guys have as well. So how do you ensure that?
Because so I think this basically boils down to the culture of an organization. Now at Careem, we believe that of course, culture eat strategy for breakfast, as they say. So culture is super important, and our culture is basically driven by some set of values as well as there are some operating principles. So we call them OS for Careem. So basically, these are 8 principles that we all believe on, and then there are some values. There are 3 main values which I can talk about in detail as well that we all believe in. So I think in terms of those guiding principles, these are those principles which allow us to operate in a very agile and open environment. So for example, just to give for a few examples, one of the principle is we're guided by our purpose and values. And so basically purpose of Careem is simplifying lives of people. And in terms of values, we have 3 main values. One is of course ownership. So we're not employees in Careem, we're all owners of the company. So that's the kind of mentality that is cascaded down to every single colleague. We don't call them employees. Secondly, being of service. So we are here, Careem exists for a certain purpose. And of course, an important thing is of being of service to our community, to our captains, even to our customers and our colleagues as well. So that's also something that's in us. And lastly, I think to the moon. So we are all very resilient people within Careem, and we've always believed in impossible. So just to give an example, when we were launching, let's say Peshawar, there was a lot of criticism that nobody will use Careem in Peshawar. We ended up launching it, and with all the great talent we had, we were pretty successful in Peshawar as well, alhamdulillah. So I think this is one operating principle. Similarly, we have others. So overall idea is, I think, all the decision making and whatever we do, the way we were quickly able to pivot towards this new strategy was because of the right culture and the right mindset we have amongst our colleagues.
Interesting. So I think सबसे सबसे जो ज़रूरी सवाल है that's on everyone's mind that knows Careem is super app. क्या scene है? What is it? And I think, like, again, pertaining to your previous comment as well, how does it fit in to your mandate, to the vision of the company, and to what you guys are trying to achieve?
बिल्कुल सही है. So I think vision, so mission जिस तरह मैंने बता दिया, simplifying lives of people and building an awesome organization that actually inspires. So उसका जो first part है, super app is very much resonant to that. So basically we started off with transportation. So ride hailing, of course, was our core business, and we'd reached a certain scale where we think that there are so many other basic things in our region that we can add value in. So, for example, पाकिस्तान में लेट्स से आप बात करें, सो बेसिक थिंग्स आर सो डिफिकल्ट. सो फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आपने आज प्लम्बर बुलाना है, सो आई मीन इट्स सच अ हैसल. फर्स्ट आप पहले पूछेंगे चार लोगों से, एंड देन यू कॉल दैट प्लम्बर, एंड देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ हैगलिंग इन टर्म्स ऑफ प्राइसेस एज वेल. So we thought ke not only in transportation, because we felt that in transportation, of course, we've reached a certain scale where we felt that we've added some value to the community. Now it's time for us to look into other verticals as well. So we thought कि कौन-कौन से वो दूसरे verticals हो सकते हैं. So we decided food है, and then there's delivery as well. So basically coming back to the point of what exactly Super App is. So idea is its Super App is one application where you'll find multiple services. Now some of the services will be owned by Careem, and there will be some services which will be owned by third parties, and Careem will just be a platform for them. Now, so होगा क्या कि basically one of the challenges in Pakistan is, for example, I was reading this research, which said that every 1 out of 2 app in Pakistan is deleted within first 5 days. So I think, and everybody has an idea that एक service के लिए there are so many applications. So for example, अगर आपने आज grocery services order करनी है, so I can tell you 4 5 applications जो कि कर सकेंगी. So as a customer, you'd never find out there, which is one service or one application where I can just go and all my essentials are being taken care of in that application. So this was truly the concept, and we've seen super apps to be very very successful in similar regions. So, for example, Southeast Asia, mein, there's Grab, there's Gojek, they're doing really well. And similarly, China, mein, we have Alipay and WeChat as well. So imagine the super app will be like a virtual mall. So जहाँ पे जिस तरह एक mall पे क्या होता है, you go there, you find multiple brands. Some brands might be owned by the management company who owns the mall as well, but there are a lot of third-party brands as well. So this is exactly the same concept in a virtual world. This will be one application जहाँ पे there will be some services which will be owned by Careem, and those services uh, initially that will be owned by Careem are basically ride-hailing, of course, food ordering, and delivery services. And then there will be some use cases around payments as well. And then there'll be a lot of third-party services as well. So this is the whole concept of Super App. Now, when it comes to implementation, so our tech is all ready. Alhamdulillah, in Dubai, we've already launched it to 100% of the user base. In Pakistan, I don't know, but some users should be able to see it because we've already rolled it out to 10% of the user base. So I don't know if you're one of those, but there should be some people who should be able to see it. And the plan is within the month of June, we'll scale it to 100% of customers. And initially, of course, we'll start off with our own services. Later in the year, we do have a plan that we'll introduce third-party services as well. Now, the biggest benefit for the third parties in this is, for example, if Saad, you want to start your own business of, let's say, blue-collar job. So now you don't have to reinvent the platform from the beginning. You just have to come to Careem, and Careem will provide all the required tech, all the platform. All you have to do is focus on your operations. So I think if you look at all the stakeholders, concept of super app is truly aligned to our mission because it actually simplifies the lives of not only our customers, not only the third parties who will be associated with us as well, but also all the people who will be earning from Careem or our platform.
Interesting. Very cool. So basically, you're building upon the mobility foundation that you've already built of moving people and things from point A to point B. और फिर उसके ऊपर anything and everything else, goods and services that
Absolutely.
Can be moved. Interesting. So in terms of like how do you see it impacting the ecosystem? क्योंकि हमने ये भी देखा है कि with Uber and Careem we've kind of seen like a lot of this advent of micro entrepreneurs कि गाड़ियां लेके you put them on Careem, you know have some decent revenue coming in from those mini ventures as well. इस particular case में like do you see this as facilitating existing businesses? Yeah, do you see this as a disruption? Which I mean, all for disruption. Obviously, things have to keep moving with the times. लेकिन do you see this as facilitating businesses that are already operating, या फिर ये भी एक वो winner takes all type of market बन जाएगी? Because we do know that although I mean super app का concept I'm sure is novel from and it's coming from Careem within Pakistan. Lekin we have also seen again I think like a lot of C-level executives and a lot of innovation officers haven't been able to catalyze innovation as much as COVID has been able to. So we've seen very quickly food delivery platforms transforming into grocery platforms and online shopping and e-commerce transforming into grocery. So aista aista jo hai wo different people are also spilling over into different types of domains, which kind of also builds on borrows from some of the elements that you're thinking about bringing in. So in terms of platforms, do you see this as a winner take all kind of a market, or फिर micro entrepreneurs के लिए और छोटे ventures के लिए क्या है? Is this a facilitator, or is this a whole new breed or a new wave of micro entrepreneurs coming to the ecosystem?
Because so I think in terms of disruption, so of course I would say it is sort of a disruption, because a lot of offline businesses that are currently ongoing, probably this concept of super app will facilitate them to move towards being online. So digital revolution, I would say this will be a disruption. And of course, government ke jo Tania ke jo plans hai, I think it is very much aligned to it as well. Now, in terms of winner takes all, I personally feel that this is the whole concept is built on partnering with various stakeholders. So isme, I don't feel there will be one player who's a winner. I mean, it will be a win-win situation for all the stakeholders involved in it. Now, the example for this is, agar aap China mein dekhen, even in Southeast Asia, there's not single player who's a winner. There's WeChat in China, and then also there's Alipay as well. So both of these players have taken different dimensions. So WeChat came in from the social aspect and became a super app. Alipay came in from a payments angle and became a super app. They're both doing great because the market size is huge. The same concept goes for Pakistan as well. अभी तो देखें हमारी population, only 35% of our population is connected. So there is ample room in the market. This is a huge market. So winner takes all वाला बिल्कुल भी नहीं होगा. Of course, the first mover gets certain advantage. But then again, I mean, there is always space for other players as well. Now, coming to your point of the, कि जहाँ पे बात की ecosystem को, how would it actually help the ecosystem? Now, I personally feel that for a lot of players, because since this model will be built on partnering, this will actually reduce a lot of their tech cost, as well as, in terms of employment, it will create a lot of employability of tech talent as well in Pakistan. So होगा ये कि, for example, anybody wants to start their own service. I mean, they don't really have to spend a lot on tech. They don't have to, put in a lot of effort on the tech front. They can come to Careem. Careem will offer them all the required tech, all the resources, the entire platform, the servers, and everything. So I think it saves a lot of cost for them as well. And उससे होगा ये कि अभी तो होता ही है ना कि startup में it's very important to have technical people. So a lot of startups are started by technology-oriented people. Is they actually a true micropreneur? I mean, a person who doesn't understand technology, but he wants to offer his services online through a platform. They will be sort of facilitated. So I personally feel, in terms of adding the value to the real micropreneurs, I think this model really, really sort of empowers them.
Makes sense. Or it's also interesting कि like it also becomes like a one-stop solution, a turnkey solution of sorts, जो कि आपको technology भी provide कर रहा है, फिर logistics वाला end भी आपका cover करके दे रहा है, where it's a plug and play kind of a model.
Absolutely, and I think so. फिर ये भी होता है कि economies of scale का, there's a lot of cost saving from economies of scale. So, for example, if you have a startup, something to do with logistics, now Careem has certain scale, which means that the cost per delivery hogi, that will be reduced, which actually will be translated into your sort of financials as well. So I think cost saving point of view, really, there's a win situation, and then in terms of providing new channels of sales, it's also a sort of a win-win situation.
Yeah. No, super interesting. So Uber, Careem, and like a lot of other startups in the last few years as well, they've been the superstars of the burn cash and grow fast wala model, right? कि profitability goes secondary, in some cases path to profitability भी आपको थोड़ा सा fictional सा लगता है. and it becomes a bit of a challenge the more you stretch out the model. And that strategy has worked wonders for a lot of companies, and they've been some very high valuations, some very rapid growth, blitz scaling वगैरह बहुत ज़्यादा हुई है. And not just in the US and Western Europe वगैरह, but also as we've seen in the Middle East and in Southeast Asia and China side as well. But I think in the last few months, even before COVID, some very significant investors started to get burnt pretty badly with that kind of a strategy, and especially now with this kind of a black swan event, like you said. तो black swan event तो है, लेकिन it's also kind of opened everyone's eyes to the fact कि यार ये हो सकता है. So do you see that strategy of burn cash, grow fast, grow crazy? Do you feel like that is now done? And or do you think investors and startups will continue to play that game and take that risk?
Yeah. So no, I think very good question, and I think it's super important for all the startups, especially in Pakistan, to realize this. So the reality is, with WeWork's IPO and Uber's IPO, the actual reality had already started changing, just like you've also mentioned. And with this COVID pandemic happening, I think total disrupt ho gaya, at least at the way VCs used to think, it has actually changed. So pehle to jis tarah a lot of startups were actually buying growth. So customer aa rahe the, we were spending money, we were buying growth. Yeah. But now I think VCs have started looking at it very differently. They want sustainability plans. So for example, any startup, they need to have some sort of road to profitability, sustainability plans kya honge, business continuity plan kya hoga. So for example, is this startup resilient enough to face any other pandemic? So truly, first of all, I think for all the startups, there are some implications, and I wanted to highlight those, and I feel this is our responsibility to highlight this to startups as well. पहली चीज तो ये है कि we all need to realize that customer behaviors have actually changed because of this pandemic, or companies who don't realize it, they actually suffer a lot. So सबसे बड़ी example मैं हमेशा देता हूँ Kodak की. So 1975 में Kodak was the first company who invented digital cameras, but then वो movies को चाहते थे कि movies industry disrupt हो जाएगी, will not sell it. Eventually, what happened, they lost the race. So customer trends have actually, behavior has actually changed. So startups need to realize this. Secondly, this is a different world, as I've mentioned. Cash management is super, super important. So how can startups extend their runways? They need to start reconsidering the model they were burning earlier. I think usko thoda sa change karna padega. Wherever their spends were, which were actually not very critical, let's say, to employee morale, they need to start looking at it. So, for example, travel, these kind of spends. And lastly, I think, of course, there are opportunities in the market as well. It's not as bleak as it sounds, but there are opportunities. Important is, biggest opportunity I feel is, this is the right time to hire the best talent. Unfortunately, companies may there have been layoffs, बहुत सारे talent ऐसे हैं जो कि बैठा हुआ है. So I think this is the right time for all these startups to hire those talent. And I think, of course, not only to startups but for all the companies, communication I feel is the key in this pandemic, because if you're not communicating well to our teams, I think वो morale impact होगा, which results in productivity drop as well. So ये तीन चार चीजें हैं. These are, I feel, very strong implications for all the startups that we need to sort of start considering.
Makes sense. So in terms of consumer behavior, मुझे ये बताएं कि do you see this as like a lasting change in consumer behavior? क्योंकि काफी सारी चीजें हैं जो कि आजकल हो रही हैं, which were unheard of. मास्क पहनना, लाइन में खड़े होना, लाइन में जगह देके खड़े होना, etc. etc. So a lot of things are changing, छोटी भी, and then like office going pattern, how you work, where you work, working from home वाला concept, remote teams kind of using technology, conventional businesses going on to technology and introducing different communication layers as far as tech is concerned. Do you see this as being lasting change right now, या फिर आपको लगता है कि वो होता है ना कि like things will go back to normal? So if let's say by some miracle कल जो है वो ऐलान होता है कि बहुत गर्मी है पाकिस्तान में और कोरोना उड़ गया है, और अब सब कुछ ठीक हो गया, सारे बाहर आते हैं. So, do you think the consumer behavior is still going to stick? या फिर will there be some change? या फिर is it going to be a relapse into the old way of doing things in the next 6 to 8 months?
So what you told basically reminds me, जैसी आ रही है कि if you look at banks, who could have
Yeah,
imagined कि banks where people will go in the mask? So I think
yeah,
definitely consumer behaviors have changed a lot. Now I
yeah.
think this pandemic, I hope I'm wrong, but I personally feel that it is here for some time unless some vaccine comes out, या फिर herd immunity
Hmm.
develop होती है, which means 60 to 70% of population getting this
Hmm.
virus. So definitely the way consumers think has actually changed. So दो
Hmm.
चीजें हैं. So for example, number one, I think habits थोड़ी सी इस तरह change हुई है कि for example, as a consumer will have generally become more health conscious, hygiene के ऊपर there's a lot of focus. For companies like operating in mobility domain, the implication is how do we regain the trust of the customers? So
Mhm.
in a lot of provinces, our services are now active, कुछ पे हो रही हैं, which actually means कि हमारे लिए the biggest thing जो earlier पहले तो हम promo फेंक के या lower price के ऊपर customer को win कर लेते थे. Now I think the strategy has to change because customer trust has been impacted. So we
Hmm.
have to work a lot on hygiene, safety के ऊपर क्या क्या हो सकता है. How do we make sure that our services, our cars are clean for all the customers? So I think this is one implication, and I feel this is here to stay with the customers. So in terms of
Sure.
this change, especially pertaining to mobility, ये जो change आया, I think next 6-7 months, we foresee this will be there. Generally, अगर
Hmm.
पाकिस्तान में देखें जो digital adoption हुई, so
Mhm.
all of a sudden हुआ ये है कि काफी सारी ऑनलाइन पेमेंट्स का काफी ट्रेंड बढ़ गया है, ऑनलाइन डिलीवरीज का बढ़ गया है. Reason is this has been sort of imposed on us क्योंकि लॉकडाउन हुआ, we didn't have any other options, so होना ही था.
Yeah.
But Pakistan के
Yeah.
केस में specifically, this is an opportunity for government as well as Pakistan as well.
Mhm.
अभी ये current situation is कि for example digital payment, so there are a lot of taxes on digital payment. So customers online banking या फिर ये easy पैसा या these digital channels की तरफ आना शुरू हो गए हैं मजबूरी में, but unless government doesn't do anything, they will move back. This is my personal view. जब
Hmm.
life normal होगी तो they will start moving back. But of
Hmm.
course, this opportunity is a big opportunity for all of us. अगर तो कुछ चीजें हैं, especially in the payments domain, I feel there are a lot of
Sure.
things that we can do as a country and even as Careem as well, which can
Hmm.
actually help us capitalize on this opportunity. But
Hmm. Hmm.
just to sum it all, to your question, I feel consumer trends and behaviors have been changed. Next
Mhm.
6-7 to 1 year, I don't think they will, reshift back to previous way of thinking very, very soon.
Sure.
So the way companies work, their strategies have to adapt accordingly.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Um, in terms of the mobility landscape, uh, how do you see it in 10 years' time? कि अब again, मतलब keeping in mind the fact कि even if we put 1.5 to 2 years का horizon to this particular pandemic, and to consumers being very limited in terms of getting around and transportation itself and how they get around. Lekin things have to begin to open up and things have to begin to go back to normal, quote unquote, new normal, if you would. So like with that in mind and with that factored in, और जो अभी आप different किस्म के consumer behavior में changes देख रहे हैं और different किस्म की जो innovative pushes देख रहे हैं from different sectors and different quarters coming in, what do you think mobility in 10 years time looks like across the world?
Yeah, I think so. Mobility in 10 years' time, the answer may vary from country to country. So, of course, for
Mm-hmm.
more developed world, you're talking about electric vehicles, autonomous cars. For Pakistan, maybe this is too much of a stretch. So, for
Mm-hmm.
Pakistan, I think in 10 years, of course, we should be able to start seeing some electric cars.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, I think ये जो health का भी short term पे आया हुआ है, hygiene वगैरह का, people will recover from it as economies grow, as business come back to usual. So I think this will become a new normal. Generally, अगर I think देखें car ownership, I personally feel कि पाकिस्तान में अभी तो खैर already बड़ी कम है as compared to any other place in the world.
Yeah.
But I think generally maybe car ownership जो है थोड़ी कम होना शुरू हो जाए because of cost pressures, So in 10 years, to be honest, there's nothing certain that you can say that this will happen. But there are few
Sure.
trends in mobility. So one is, of course, I feel electric vehicles will come in because अभी अगर आप देखें so इस mobility business में, especially ride hailing में, majority of your cost is your supply cost. जो आपके let's say vehicle के पास जा रही है. So उनकी cost कैसे reduce होगी? Either through electric vehicles or some sort of low cost fuel. Secondly, a bit of far-fetched, but I mean, this is a reality and can happen as well. Self-driven cars as well. If this comes in, it actually reduces more cost for these mobility players as well. So I think ये दो तीन trends हैं जो कि पाकिस्तान में हम देख सकते हैं. 10 years में maybe self-driven cars not in Pakistan, but we might start seeing some pivot toward that direction as well when it comes to mobility. But definitely electronic vehicles and fuel efficient vehicles is something which I feel will come in the near term.
That makes a lot of sense. Lekin, again, just to kind of push back on that a little bit as well, इस particular situation में या इस particular pandemic में, do you feel like people might have उनका आपने जैसा से कहा कि like trust और confidence भी थोड़ा सा जो है वो impact हुआ है. आहिस्ता आहिस्ता, like I know a lot of people who are moving in that direction कि यार आहिस्ता आहिस्ता we don't need as many cars at home, and eventually if you look at New York and San Francisco और इस तरह की आप major hubs को अगर देखते हैं, so a lot of people had stopped owning a car क्योंकि parking costs, maintenance costs वगैरह वगैरह, driving in the city is so troublesome. तो लेकिन do you see that as थोड़ा सा undo भी हो रहा है, थोड़ा सा trust के like लोगों की dependency शायद उतनी ज्यादा उस डायरेक्शन में ना मूव करे कि we're entirely reliant on external platforms?
So I think US and these developed countries are very different from Pakistan. वहाँ पे तो basic transportation का infrastructure is very strong, so they have alternates as well. Pakistan, I think it's a different story. Next 10 years में the way we are going, at least I don't think public transport में कोई बहुत बड़ी revolution आने वाली है. So I think people will need to travel, of course. And वहाँ पे I personally feel because public transport system हमारे इतना strong नहीं है, so this will be done by private players usually. Now what can happen is the mode of transport can maybe change. तो अगर अभी लोग गाड़ी बहुत ज़्यादा use कर रहे हैं, so maybe they at some point in time in Pakistan they start moving towards micromobility. So हमने जैसे अभी recently cycling का एक बहुत trend देखा है. So you never know, at some point in time crowded हो जाए, parking के ऊपर taxes लगना शुरू हो जाए, fuel cost high चली जाए, so people start exploring micromobility opportunities, which is also happening in other parts of the world as well. इसी तरह mass transit के ऊपर भी there could be some options, but of course अभी जो current options हैं, whatever the current plays are, economically they're not sustainable. So I think that's a separate area जो economics है उसकी. So if some player is able to crack the economics of mass commute, I think that could be also way forward for Pakistan as well. So to sum it all, transportation लोगों ने point A to point B तो जाना है, and most probably अगर cars अभी हैं, so it can happen कि या तो low cost cars पे आने शुरू हो जाएंगे या फिर some sort of mass transport, but then people will continue some form of mobility. The vehicle might change, but mobility itself is here to stay.
Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. I think no questions there. Before we go to some Q&A vagera from some of the people that are listening, I think the last question that I want to ask you is if you want to put your consultant hat on and speak to some of the startup founders or some of even like I think executives running conventional businesses at the time जो कि 20-30-40 साल से जो है have been running turning stable revenues वगैरह, and everyone is going through this world changing earth shattering किस्म का incident, and they've had to kind of dynamically impact in terms of organizing their thoughts, in terms of organizing the incoming signals, and rather to differentiate the signals from the noise and interpret that in a coherent strategic pivot or strategic direction. What are the 2-3 tips that you would give? I know you mentioned OKRs, you mentioned listening to the customer more. Lekin if you were to walk in to a business that's going through tough times right now as a consultant, what would you say are the key things to focus on and how to think about it?
Yes, so I think इसको थोड़ा सा rephrase करूँगा. So for example, as a consultant, if I have to start thinking कि मैं एक successful business किस तरह खड़ा कर सकता हूँ या startup किस तरह बना सकता हूँ, uh, what would those things be? So I think if I'm just thinking out loud, so I think first four most important thing which I've noticed across all common successful startups or businesses, yeah, wo companies who can pivot successfully to any pandemic, yeah, crisis, is that they are able to identify a problem which is big enough. So whether it's Uber or Airbnb or Careem, they've all solved a problem. So I think first more tip for any startup or any business which is struggling right now is to find out a problem and make sure the problem is big enough that you start finding solutions for that problem. Secondly, I think we all the companies. I think this is very important, and not a lot of people talk about it. Is purpose. So there's a very famous book called Start with a Why by Simon Sinek. It basically talks about companies who built on a purpose and companies who build without a purpose and on a functional layer. So, as an example, देते हैं Apple versus let's say Dell example. So Apple is a company which is built on a purpose, a very strong purpose, and the purpose is it wants to create disruption. It wants to challenge status quo. So Apple, when it launched mobiles, it was a big success, and people who bought it not because of its functionality, but because they actually associated themselves with Apple. So अगर आपने MacBook पकड़ी हुई है, so probably there are a lot of other laptops which are way better than MacBook. But the reason Saad is bought MacBook is because Saad is a disruptor. Saad can associate with Apple and believes in their purpose. On the other hand, जब Dell ने mobiles launch किए, so it was a huge flop. Although technically they were much better than Apple, but because people always look at Dell very functionally, okay, a computer company. So I think purpose is very, very important. So all the startups need to make sure that their foundation is built on a very strong purpose. Thirdly, I think for any new startup, especially, पहले तो ये होता था कि business case बना के you try to raise some funding, but I think in this new world it's super important to build some sort of MVP और उसको market के ऊपर validate करें. And make sure you're very, very close to your customers so that अगर कोई भी customer behavior change हो रहा है, you are able to read that. So I think तीन चीजों की बात की है. Probably a company problem identification is super important for any business to pivot successfully. Purpose driven approach is super important. Then of course making sure that you have you reading all the customer behaviors correctly. That's super important. And fourth, which I feel is one of the most important one, is make sure that you have the right people in your team or you're surrounded by the right people. Because companies, jitni bhi successful companies hain, they are actually their success is defined by the first few hundred people that they'll hire. So I think ye चार चीजें which I feel is super important for either any startup or any even corporation which is reached to a certain scale, but they're struggling towards this pandemic and they want to pivot toward their strategy towards success. So I think ये चीजें देखनी जरूरी है. And lastly, I think for startups generally, a lot of startups उनका एक concern होता है how do we scale quickly. So Airbnb का भी एक वो था कि the way they scaled was they stopped thinking about scale. They only focused on first few hundred customers. So काफी सारे I'm forgetting the name of that person. I think probably Airbnb का CEO ही था. But basically he said that it's always better to build a product which is loved by very few people rather than building something which is just liked by a lot of people. So I think scale के बारे में all the startups, they don't have to worry about scale in the beginning. Make sure that you're addressing the right problem, you're catering to the right customer needs, and then you're listening to your customers very carefully, especially the first few customers. So I think these are a few things that I'd want to advise to all these startups.
No, very valuable. I think Kevin Kelly also talks about this, who's one of the founders of Wired, which is a technology magazine. वो भी ये कहते हैं, I think like he has a very popular article about this, कि like find your first 100 customers that are just obsessed with you. कि like वो आपसे प्यार करते हैं इतना ज़्यादा कि they will take your product, they will evangelize it, they will take it to other people, they will become first adopters, they will be angry with you. कि आपका ये ठीक नहीं है, वो ठीक नहीं है. They will give you feedback. They will be like not just financially but emotionally invested.
Absolutely.
In the product.
Absolutely. I think even if I recall, so Careem के case में भी this is exactly what happened. So एक बड़ी problem थी, of course, transport की बहुत बड़ी problem थी in our region. एक सर्विस थी एंड फ्यू जो शुरू के कस्टमर्स हैं स्पेशली कैप्टन्स आर आल्सो कस्टमर्स फॉर अस राइट वो ऐसे कैप्टन्स होते थे कि उनसे वी वुड पर्सनली नो देयर नेम्स तो अभी भी कुछ पुराने कैप्टन हैं जो कि आज बल्कि एक इनफैक्ट इस्लामाबाद का कैप्टन था वो ही वाज प्रीटी क्यूरियस अबाउट इंटरसिटी सर्विसेज सो ही रीच्ड आउट टू मी पर्सनली so I think this is the kind of bond we should establish with our first few customers and I think वो फिर जब scale पे company पहुंच जाती है how do we manage it that itself is a separate topic but I think there's no iota of doubt basically कि customers first few customers are super important and they will be your ambassadors so आपको probably marketing spends भी इतने ज्यादा नहीं करने करें पड़ेंगे if you have the right product you're addressing the right problem and if you are very close to your customers first few hundred customers
बिल्कुल सही है Zeeshan, before we jump into the Q&A, I just want to take this moment to thank you for your time. I know कि इस time के ऊपर जब इतनी सारी firefighting वगैरह चल रही है, it's very difficult to build in time to your schedule. But this was extremely useful, extremely insightful, and not just from a understanding के what does Careem have in store for the future, but also in terms of like what startups can do in general. So thank you so much for taking out the time.
Thank you very much, Saad. I think to be honest, the kind of work Daftar Khan is doing is really commendable because I personally feel that this is our social responsibility as business leaders, as people operating in industry, even for you guys as well. This is our responsibility to share our learnings with startups, and I think the kind of program you've started, this is really commendable because it truly adds value to a lot of startups. I still remember, I think वो दफ्तर कौन का ही एक probably एक session था उसके बाद one of my friends like he actually told me it was I think a month back or something यार ये session था and this guy I think it was around probably pricing or some leadership but then they basically told me this is what I've learned from this session this was really insightful what is your view so I think this is the kind of stuff we all should be doing and you guys are doing great job.
Thank you so much. हम लोग तो वही अपने शौक के लिए करते हैं because we learned so much and at the end of the day really I think it's really about the community and I think that's what Careem is all about as well. So it's a virtuous cycle and we all learn from each other. So thank you once again and thank you to everyone who's logged in, who's watching on Facebook and YouTube. We keep having these conversations and we keep hosting these amazing startup founders and these amazing executives and veterans of the game for different conversations and sessions for Dr. Khan Insights and Fireside Chats and a number of other events as well. आजकल सब कुछ online हो रहा है और सब कुछ distant हो रहा है लेकिन hopefully not very socially distant. So you can just follow us on social media to just stay tuned to the different activities that are happening and please give us your feedback. So we can keep improving. And yeah, thank you all once again.